Good Wednesday morning, everyone. Welcome back to another Weather on the Go weather forecast where you get all your weather coverage. In today's video, we'll be talking about your quiet weather pattern that is happening now, but we are going to be gearing up for a significant storm system into next week with a major warm-up, severe weather, and heavy rainfall, as well as a full tropical weather update in this video, including the potential for a landfalling system for the United States. I will answer that question later on in this video. Welcome back, everyone. Like I said, good Wednesday morning out there. If you guys do like long-range weather forecasts and weather forecast breakdowns across North America, the tropics, and Canada, do press the subscribe button down below and hit the notification bell to get all of my important weather updates moving forward here on this channel. So without further ado, let's get into the weather forecast here. Across the middle of the country, we do see kind of that return flow with some of the warmer air moving from south to north across the center of the country, across the Great Plains, across the upper Midwest. That is due to the departure of a upper level trough moving out across southeastern Canada and also a trough across the west coast here as we head into this afternoon. So right in the middle here, we have a warm up across the middle of the country. That will continue more or less as we head into Thursday and into your Friday before we start to see big changes as we head into next week. But looking at your temperatures here for this afternoon, we have widespread 80s to lower 90s across much of the Great Plains, all the way down to the Gulf Coast here this afternoon. That will continue as we head into your Thursday with some cooler temperatures up to the north into North Dakota, the Arrowhead of Minnesota, and across much of New England. Some of these spots could be in the 60s from Maine all the way back to New York State on your Thursday. And then on Friday, we'll start to warm up across portions of the Ohio Valley and parts of the Mid-Atlantic as well. However, the Northeast and the Northern Plains will still kind of remain below average with 60s across portions of North Dakota, the northern Minnesota area, as well as parts of New England as we head into your Friday, September 16th. So looking at this here as we head into later on today, we kind of have a general Pacific flow. We have a flow, kind of a zonal flow across most of the jet stream, especially across the western United States here. So this is leading to more of a quiet weather pattern as we head into today and really as we head through the rest of this week. I really don't expect too much in the way of any, dangerous weather out there. Yeah, we may have a couple of marginal risk severe weather days out there for the next couple of days, but overall a pretty quiet weather pattern, I think, as we head all the way through Friday before we start to see some changes. And as we move through Friday, you can see the jet stream pretty flattened here. We have a zonal flow, like I said, a little bit of a ridge starting to build across the southeastern United States with a high pressure system there, but largely kind of a broad trough digging in across the Pacific Northwest. Both of these working in tandem to kind of produce a zonal flow off of the eastern Pacific as we head through the rest of this week. But changes are coming, and we definitely have a significant storm system moving in as we head into early on this weekend, into as early as Saturday. We have a very potent trough starting to dig in across the Pacific Northwest and down into California, and this is a positively tilted trough. And you could definitely see how strong the jet streak is, and this is going to, wreak some havoc across portions of the country as we head into next week. And as we get into, the Saturday, Sunday time frame, this trough is going to take its sweet time moving from west to east. But once it does into next week, we definitely could be talking about some, warm up at first, but then maybe some severe weather and heavy rainfall across the Great Plains as we head into next week. And again, kind of lingering across portions of California on your Sunday. And looking out ahead of this storm system, we're going to have a pretty significant warm up as well, with major warmth across the Great Plains, the Midwest, the Ohio Valley, all the way up into the New England region, from Monday, September 19th, all the way through at least Friday, September 23rd. And with this trough digging in across much of the West Coast into California, Nevada, and the Pacific Northwest, this is going to lead to slightly cooler than normal temperatures across portions of these areas as we head into next week as well. Looking at the precipitation from this trough, it does look like it's going to bring some rainfall, much needed rainfall across portions of Nevada, maybe parts of California, getting all the way up into portions of the northwestern Rockies, and even parts of the Four Corners region, down toward Phoenix, up toward the Salt Lake City area. You could definitely expect some above normal rainfall potentially as we get into next week. Drier than normal conditions underneath that kind of stronger ridge developing into next week across much of the southeast, the Tennessee Valley, and the Mid-Atlantic can be expected, with more subsidence and kind of more sunny skies across these areas. And that will lead to a warm up across these areas as well as we head into next week ahead of that storm system. So looking here at Monday, September 19th, we do have the storm system that is going to start to take shape here on the base of the trough. We're going to have a low pressure system develop and track its way from southwest to northeast as we head from early to middle of the week next week. And ahead of this storm system, it's going to have a big influence here out of the western Gulf of Mexico. A lot of dew points rising back into the 60s, maybe even 70-degree dew points cannot be ruled out across portions of the Missouri Valley and southward toward the Dixie Alley region here down into portions of Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi out ahead of this storm system. And you can really see where this cold front will start to develop here, kind of a dry line also developing across portions of the western Great Plains as we move into your Tuesday. And this is going to be the focal point for thunderstorm activity here, with some convective showers and storms developing peak heating of the day and then kind of, washing out a little bit as we head into the overnight hours. And this will be the prime time for some severe weather and heavy rainfall. And you can see that the front doesn't move very quickly. It's going to kind of linger around these same areas from the Texas Panhandle all the way up to the Great Lakes as we head through much of the early and middle portion of next week. So looking at the rainfall amounts of what we could see up here across the upper Midwest and back towards the Central Plains there, and even southeastern Canada, we could be seeing some appreciable rainfall amounts through the next week or so. We could see with the storm system, potentially dumping as much as 1 to perhaps up to 5 inches of rain, especially as you get up here into portions of the far upper Midwest toward the international border there between the United States and Canada. Portions there of the the Arrowhead of Minnesota, getting up into portions of southwestern Ontario, Canada. Yeah, we could be talking about localized areas over 6 inches of rain. So that is something to watch as we head into the next week. Again, there's going to be a little bit of some differences in the models, but I do tend to think that this model is onto something as we head here into next week. And also looking at the severe weather side of this here, we will have some shears starting to develop as early as Monday across the Central Plains. We might have to watch for maybe a marginal risk type of severe weather setup on Monday. But as we get into Tuesday, I do think this strong low-level jet starts to kick in, especially across Minnesota, northwestern Iowa, and perhaps as far south as northern Kansas. And this is where we could maybe see a slight risk, potentially severe weather day. We'll have to wait and see what the Storm Prediction Center's forecast does come out as. But yeah, it does look pretty impressive at this distance for a kind of severe weather setup across parts of the upper Midwest, all the way back down here towards the Central Plains with this strong low-level jet, with the strong moisture here advecting northward out of the western Gulf of Mexico into the early week portion of next week. And looking here at the SPC, the Storm Prediction Center did come out with here a few months ago or so, to my understanding, a new severe thunderstorm outlook category kind of, chart here with marginal, slight, enhanced, moderate, and high risk here. And they have a bunch of different here things to talk about on this chart. You can visit this here at spc.gov. This is their information, their products. So definitely a very helpful tool if we do have more severe weather here coming up into next week. Looking back here at the 2022 severe weather season, it's been up to this point pretty active. We've had a lot of quiet time between, summer and getting into early fall, but we really did have a very active spring. We had lots of severe thunderstorm watches here. All of these blue shaded areas are the frequency of how many severe thunderstorm watches we've seen. And the densest area of severe thunderstorm watches were actually across portions here of the Dakotas and Montana, all the way down into the Great Plains, and even some more here kind of across the I-95 corridor in the Northeast. Not surprisingly, a lot of these areas did see a lot of large hail, a lot of damaging winds here this year, and they're actually looking here at the red shaded areas up to this point. There's been a lot of tornado watches across portions of the Deep South, the Gulf Coast, and even parts of the upper Midwest as well, especially into southern portions of Minnesota. So it's been an active year, and it looks like we're going to kind of be ramping up the severe weather season as we move into, next week. And this could become, potential of, an outbreak of severe weather. So that's something we'll watch as we get into next week for you guys. But looking back here at the La Nina, we still got a La Nina in place here. You can see along the equatorial Pacific here, along the equator, just west of South America, we have these cooler than normal sea surface temperatures. Maintaining a moderate La Nina, we have a pretty close to a negative 1.0 on the Nino index, which is firmly in the middle of a moderate La Nina right now. Kind of wavy up and down here, kind of strengthening and weakening, but largely staying pretty, consistently in the moderate La Nina status here as we've had, the last couple of weeks. But looking at the tropics, and why the La Nina is important is because as we're in a moderate La Nina, it tends to help the tropics out with bigger storms, more frequent storms across portions of the Atlantic, and usually less frequent storms across the eastern Pacific, but I'll get to that here in just a moment. Looking across the Atlantic here over the next 2 to 5 days, the National Hurricane Center does come out with a 50% chance of a tropical storm or depression starting to develop. And this could be named Fiona as we go through the next 2 to 5 days here, just near the Windward Islands, and then potentially as far west as the Greater Antilles as we head in towards, the next 2 to 5 days. Looking at the satellite imagery right now, that's the wave we're watching here well to the east right now, the Windward Islands. This is going to continue to press its way to the west. Again, maybe another wave developing behind that. And if that develops here, right now, the National Hurricane Center doesn't have an area highlighted for that, but if that develops further to the west, that could be named Gaston. So we'll continue to watch that as we get into next week. Looking at where we see the moisture here, all the green shaded colors, that is actually the moisture. Where you see brown shaded colors, that is actually drier air. We do have a lot of moisture across the southern Atlantic Ocean right now, so there's a lot of kind of energy hanging around across the the southern and central Atlantic right now, waiting to move westward, and it will do just that as we head towards late this week into this weekend. We will have what could be named Fiona moving towards the Greater Antilles as we head towards Saturday afternoon, with maybe, Gaston being named behind that potentially as we get towards later on into this weekend. So that will be something to watch. But as we move into next week, while we have all of that big storm system across the, the center of the country, we're also going to be watching the tropics here, where we could be seeing Fiona develop into a formidable tropical storm potentially towards the Bahamas or towards portions of Cuba as we get towards, the Monday, September 19th timeframe, and maybe even a formidable tropical depression or storm that could be named Gaston just behind that here, moving towards the west, the Windward Islands into next week. And looking at this as well with the wind component here, using the European forecast model, this will press its way to the west. And now this is where some differences do come into play here with these models. The CMC, or the Canadian model, does have this system here across portions of Cuba, kind of over land as we head into the Monday, September 19th time frame. But then the European forecast model has it a little bit farther off to the north and east, maybe even as a Category 1 hurricane. So there are some differences here in the models. Again, there are a lot of differences in these models, with regards to the track of these systems here as far west as the Gulf of Mexico or the Western Atlantic. So we'll continue to kind of hatch down where we could see this track, but definitely the potential is rising for a formidable tropical storm, if not a Category 1 hurricane at least, as it gets closer toward the Bahamas and the Greater Antilles, that we will have to watch as we get toward that time frame. And again, looking at the Canadian model, it does have a very formidable hurricane actually developing across the northeastern Gulf of Mexico. While that is possible, right now I'm kind of leaning towards the European a little bit more, because the Canadian model is really the only one showing this right now. So we'll continue to watch to see if there's more consistency and kind of more model run to run continuing for this to kind of show it for the next few runs. And again, the GFS model really not showing anything. So there's a lot of differences in the models, where you have the GFS model not showing much, the European tracking it farther to the east, and then the Canadian model tracking it into the Gulf of Mexico. So again, we will watch this through the next few days for you guys. And again, looking at the water temperatures out there and the oranges, the red shaded colors, no surprise that we could have hurricanes out there, towards late September. It is, after all, hurricane season, and we're still watching this out across portions of the Caribbean, the Gulf, and the Atlantic for you guys. These water temperatures, especially across the Caribbean here, the Western Atlantic, and the Gulf, are 80 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit, if not a little bit warmer there. So definitely very formidable and favorable for these systems to develop. Looking at this climatologically, the named storms that are named in September do kind of move to the west toward the Windward Islands and just north usually of the Greater Antilles, and then kind of curve back towards the Western Atlantic here, mainly off of the coast here of the east coast of the United States. But every once in a while, a couple of these storms do sneak in toward the Gulf of Mexico, so we'll still have to watch that. And looking at hurricanes, again, usually in September, these storm systems and hurricanes like to kind of curve up toward the Western Atlantic. So again, it has a lower probability in September of moving towards Florida, but we'll still have to watch you guys in the United States as we head into next week. Looking also here at the Eastern Pacific, we are seeing an active weather pattern here in the tropics as well. We got a 20% chance of a developing tropical depression over the next 1 to 2 days here. But I'm more concerned about this system here that has an 80% chance of developing over the next 2 to 5 days right along the Mexico coast here and moving up towards the southern end there of the Baja of California, potentially having its sights yet again on Cabo San Lucas. So we'll continue to watch that. And looking at the satellite imagery here using the Eastern Pacific satellite, you can definitely see a lot of disorganized convection, disorganized thunderstorm activity right now, but this will be strengthening and kind of organizing a little more into next week as well. So looking at the European forecast model, the greens here, you see more moisture in the environment. The browns, you see more drier air. There's a lot of moisture in the Eastern Pacific right now, and this is why we're seeing more active weather here. Usually the Eastern Pacific is not this busy, but it's been very busy this year here. And the next named storm would be Lester, so we'll continue to watch that as we head into the next few days. Looking at this afternoon, maybe a 1009 low pressure there and maybe a 1010 low pressure coming out of the Central Americas toward the southern coast of Mexico. Looking at this as we get toward Friday, maybe developing into a tropical depression by Friday here on the European forecast model just off the coast here of Mexico. But then as we get into early next week here, we could be developing into a formidable tropical storm with tropical storm force winds getting very close to the western Mexico coast and also southern portions of the Baja of California, potentially as far north as Cabo San Lucas into next week. And again, looking at this here with the winds, we could be seeing winds here, at least on this model, up to around 40, 50 miles per hour into early next week. We'll have to watch on your Monday, maybe getting as far north as the southern end there of Baja of California. Looking at the GFS, this develops it a little bit stronger toward a 997 millibar low pressure center, which would maybe be a stronger tropical storm, if not a Category 1 hurricane on this model. And looking at the Canadian model, actually pretty strong as well, with more of a kind of formidable system with a 996 millibar low pressure center, which would be a more formidable Category 1 or 2 hurricane. So we'll continue to watch this as we get into early next week. Again, there's a lot of agreement that this system will be tracking up along the coast of western Mexico towards Cabo San Lucas as we get towards the middle of next week. And again, no surprise here in the Eastern Pacific, just like the Atlantic, we have a lot of warmer waters across the coast here of Mexico up towards the Baja of California. And the oranges here, that's where we have water temperatures in the 80s here. So definitely a lot of warm water for these systems to work with. And looking here as well with climatology across the Eastern Pacific, usually in September, these named storms kind of hug the coast there just to the west of Mexico and kind of travel up just near or west of the Baja of California. And that's what this system could take a track as. And the same thing holds true with hurricanes being named across the Eastern Pacific Ocean as well. So we'll continue to watch that as we head into next week, guys. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, subscribe down below and hit the notification bell so you guys get all of my important weather updates. Thank you guys so much for watching. Remember to like the video as well down below by giving it a thumbs up. Leave any comments, questions, and concerns below. I'll get to those later on today. Well, guys, thank you guys so much for watching. Have a great Wednesday out there, and I'll see you all in the next video.